So, describe what life on tour with Muddy was like, both as a member of his band and then later as a solo musician on your own.
Well, Muddy was famous in the blues world. Maybe the only other blues band more famous than his was B.B. King's. B.B. King had a bus and rode around on that. Muddy had a couple of Chevy Suburbans and then bought a couple of vans to hold 7 people in the equipment, and there'd be 2 people driving. Muddy himself, by the time I got in the band, where he was 59 years old, would fly to the gigs if they were more than 100 miles away from Chicago. But it was nothing like any kind of rock star life at all. It was driving from city to city long ways and having all kinds of experiences on the roads. You certainly got to see the country, but it was not easy. We carried our own equipment around. Not Muddy, he had somebody that took care of that for him, but I certainly always did, and I still do. Now, on the road these days, if I'm playing with a band that I bring from North Carolina, where I live, which doesn't happen that much anymore, we'll all get in a van and try and divide up the driving so that nobody gets too tired. And I used to have a big Dodge 15-passenger van, and about 5 years ago I traded it in and got a Soccer Mom minivan. And it takes the same amount of the equipment we need. We don't have to carry PA systems around there wherever we play. But we drive around in that thing all stuffed in there, sometimes with an upright bass poking out between the seats. And for me, there's a lot more similar than different to the way we used to travel on the ground. The big difference is that I'm flying a lot more these days. These days I'm doing something that I saw some of the older blues musicians like Gatemouth Brown do. He would fly over to Europe by himself and use different rhythm sections from different bands, maybe bass, drums, and piano, somebody that could follow what he was doing. Sometimes they'd be jazz musicians, and sometimes they'd be blues musicians, but he was very picky about who played with him. I did get to actually play bass with him once when he was going to use Muddy's bass and drums, and our bass player was sick, so I played bass with him, and Muddy liked the way I played bass, and this is about 1977 or so, and I helped get that guitar player I mentioned, Jimmy Rogers, on one of Muddy's albums. It's called I'm Ready. They hadn't played together in about 20 years, and they really loved each other, and their 2 guitars went together like one person with 4 hands playing. It was just spectacular. However, by helping get Jimmy on the gig, the recording job, I put myself out of it. And Muddy said, I like the way you play bass with Gatemouth. Why don't you just play bass on the album? So I just got to sit there and play, well, you know how many bass players it takes to change a light bulb?
How many?
1, 5, 1, 5, 1. So I got to sit there and play 1, 5 while watching Muddy Waters and Jimmy Rogers play guitars together like we're going to in a few minutes for the first time in 20 years. And then I was lucky enough to get to produce the reissue of that album when they made a new one for CD about 5 or 6 years ago. And it was just a tremendous experience for me to learn. It was just educational to watch. Excuse me. We all have our favorite musicians that we like. If I was to ask you, we'd probably, I mean, I could guess a couple of them, and I'm sure Buddy Guy would be on the list.
Definitely.
You know, you see his face when I said the words Buddy Guy? That's, as a lot of the old blues guys say, that's what I'm talking about. And that's it. I love Buddy's music too. A lot of people think that he fools around too much on stage and stuff. I don't care. I love every note he plays. I don't care how cute he wants to be. He's just fantastic to me. I love his singing and his playing. But well, we we try and learn from our heroes. And for me, it was an incredible opportunity to actually play with them and have somebody like Muddy Waters trying to help me. What he did was on the bandstand, put me on his right side so I could watch him play. And so there are a whole lot of pictures from the 1970s of Muddy sitting there playing and me right next to him going like that, trying to get it.
So how does recording in the studio differ from performing live?
It depends on the musician. For Muddy, he just wanted everybody to go in and play just like they did on the bandstand. He didn't overdub anything. He overdubbed 2 songs, he told me, in his life, and it was in the 60s, and it turned out it was that song "You Shook Me" that Led Zeppelin did later. Muddy did that with a different band and just overdubbed his vocal with it, and there was another one that Led Zeppelin did from that same about you need schooling or something like that. I can't remember what the name of it is. That's the one. Well, they did. Led Zeppelin called it something else and eventually got sued behind that stuff. But those were the only ones Muddy overdubbed. Generally, he'd just go in the studio and just play it like we play it on the bandstand. We all understand the language of this music, who plays what and when, who takes a solo when they're cued to take a solo, and how we're going to end the song, and everything was in the service of the song. And the main thing in the song was Muddy and his voice. Now, as it happened, he also was a monstrously great slide guitar player. He didn't have this one signature thing that he did. He just would do anything all over the guitar. He played it in standard tuning, but when he originally started playing in the Delta, he would play in open G tuning most of the time, and there are recordings from about 1942 that feature him doing that and only that. In the mid-40s, when he moved to Chicago, Jimmy Rogers told me he showed Muddy how to play in standard tuning, but Muddy was never much of a soloist except with the slide. Muddy said, "I want my slide to be so strong, I'm just going to learn how to play it in standard tuning as well," and he did that. He always he had a little slide, maybe this long, he put on the end of his pinky. It'd cover maybe 3 strings, but the rest of the time he could use his other 4 fingers to play just the way that you do it, and including the thumb, which you sometimes wrap around the other top. I know how many fingers we have, unless you're Hound Dog Taylor, who had 6 fingers on each hand.
Really?
Yeah.
I never knew that.
If you look at one of his albums, there's just a big picture of his hand with a little extra pinky sticking out. Pretty wild stuff.